Live from the Shooting from the Lip studio in Louisville, Kentucky, it's the KT Unearthly Show with your hosts, Kevin Hale and Tiffany Mack.
What is up, everyone? Kevin Hale up in this Shooting from the Lip studio on one side of the town for this Friday night, October 28th, 2016. It is the Halloween edition of the KT Unearthly Show. We're back together, Tiffany. And it was last week where you were doing the solo thing because I had to go out to play or listen to people play music. But here we are once again on a Friday night. Just you and me. Forever will be Tiffany.
And a few extra fun friends, right? Oh, that was a nice rhyme.
With a little help, get by with a little help. Yeah. So, yeah, we got some friends on tonight. So, what's up, lady?
Well, my daughter was sick last week, so I had a few little episodes of having to run away and leave Micah, talking because he can just do that. Yeah. He just talks to himself anyway, so I can just leave him for hours. But so Lily's doing better, and that's a good thing. And beautiful week here. We've got a great Halloween program coming up, and I was just really excited about this. We've been dying to get this together for 2 months. We've been thinking about Halloween. So hopefully tonight is going to be just as wonderful as we imagined in our heads. So yeah, I'm ready to rock.
Our first guest, I threw the notion at you for the TK foreplay topic, the WikiLeaks emails, all of those things that are tied into the potential knowledge, information in the existence or knowledge of extraterrestrial. I said, let's bring Grant Cameron on, who is doing an ongoing storytelling, if you will, on his Facebook. And then, of course, usually our foreplay segment is just 5 minutes or so. And, Grant, like Micah, you can ask Grant and Micah a yes or no question, and, we'll get a 5-minute response. But that's okay.
Oh yeah,
because it's good stuff for us. Yeah. So that's those guys. Yeah, make our show fun. So first segment, TK foreplay, WikiLeaks emails. John Podesta, Grant Cameron will join us, and then the second segment, we're going to shift into that Halloween type theme, if you will. We'll have Philip and Julia Siracusa. Philip is a author of the books The Horsefly Chronicles and The Curse of the Horsefly Chronicles. It's about a demonic haunting that they're living with. So we'll touch on that later. But let me plug our show. You can subscribe to our show on iTunes and YouTube, Shooting from the Lip, Twitter, at The Shooting Lip, at Tiffany Mac _ET, at Kevin Hale 423. You can like us, follow us on Facebook and Instagram, Shooting from the Lip and the KT Unearthly Show. Again, live tonight via Blog Talk Radio. Tiffany, if you're ready to shift into overdrive, let's bring our first guest on and let's talk WikiLeaks emails and get the lowdown.
Yeah, so Grant Cameron is a guest that we've had on before, and I could not wait to get him back on because, first of all, the 2 hours is just not long enough for Grant. I mean, this man is a wealth of knowledge. And so tonight, Grant, welcome to the show. Tell us about all of the details that you're finding in regards to the Podesta emails and Tom DeLonge, and tell us what this is all about.
Whoever it was, the Russians or U.S. intelligence or somebody got a hold of John Podesta's emails. And John Podesta, of course, is critically important because he was the X-Files man in the Clinton White House. He's very interested in UFOs. He has openly, on a number of occasions, stated that he wants disclosure on UFOs. And so when these emails started leaking, there were 50,000. I think they're up to, this morning was about 35,000. There's 50,000 coming out. What's happening is, I say this may be the story that is like the UFO that crashes in New York City. It's a story they can't control because they have tried to shut down the WikiLeaks email dump by shutting off Julian Assange's internet access at the Ecuador Pavilion or the embassy. But he knew this might be coming, so he allowed his emails. I guess there's a bunch of sites that have the emails, and they're still dumping these emails, about 1,500 a day. And what's happened is what you're seeing is this behind-the-scenes conversations with people talking to John Podesta, this very critically important and powerful guy in Washington on UFOs. I mean, this is a guy who is running the Hillary Clinton campaign. He has the first and last word on the Hillary Clinton campaign. He's the guy that bailed Bill Clinton out of all his messes, the Monica Lewinsky mess and all that stuff. Very, very powerful, has the big Democratic think tank, the Center for American Progress. And there are two basic sets of emails that are of interest. One is a whole series of emails. I believe there's now 18 emails that deal with the Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell, who was trying to get a meeting with Barack Obama on zero-point energy and UFO disclosure. And he was going through three different women. There was Jessica Hardcastle-Wright was one, Terry Mansfield was another, and there's a third woman by the name of Suzanne. And they were it was their job to get a meeting. So they were going through John Podesta to get a meeting with the president. And one of the emails is fairly significant. It's sort of, I think it was written by Terry Mansfield, where she says she'd like to have this meeting. And so they arranged this meeting for John Podesta to meet with Edgar Mitchell on the subject. I think it was August 11th, 2014. And then Terry emails back, and you can see all these emails. And Terry emails back and says, Edgar Mitchell can't make it. Can we have a three-way Skype conversation? It'll be you, me, and Edgar Mitchell. And it's at that point, the secretary, a lot of this stuff is handled through two of John Podesta's secretaries. And the one secretary says, well, John will meet one-on-one before he takes it to the president. So this basically says that there was an agreement for John Podesta to sit down with Edgar Mitchell to talk zero-point energy and UFO disclosure. And if it worked out, then he would go to the president, which to me is always significant because it doesn't say he's going to go to the Wizard of Oz or the Evil Cabal, or he's going to go to the president, which indicates that the president does have the need to know, and the president is running the show. So this meeting never took place, though. Even though there's 18 emails, the meeting never took place between Edgar Mitchell and John Podesta. The other ones that's of significance, and these are really important. This is the Tom DeLonge emails. And what happens is the backstory to that is that Tom DeLonge, even though I'm putting out an article that will sort of counter his understanding of UFOs. He believes it's all evil. All the UFO is bad news. He has what's called a cargo cult theory, where religions are started by people seeing UFOs, and that the aliens are sort of giving weapons to all the different religions, and whoever survives, the aliens will deal with, which is just like, I mean, pretty wacky theory. But anyway, he basically takes this theory to the head of Lockheed Skunk Works, whose name is Robert Weiss. And you'll hear him in interviews. He talks about, he doesn't name the guy, but what happens is in these WikiLeaks emails, these guys' names are actually released. And the one guy's name is Robert Weiss, and he is the head of Lockheed Skunk Works. He's the guy that's running Area 51. And he gets in behind there. In his interviews, he talks about this, how he presents this theory, and they sort of say, okay, whatever. And then they have this 55-minute conversation on consciousness. And he gets on the inside, and he claims that he's got 10 high-level government sources who are using him, because he says that to the government, he said, you can't get this out. You have no ability. You've got a bad, press. The young people, I can get it to the young people. I've got, this media empire of music and Twitter and Facebook and stuff, and I can get the message out. And so they make this decision. They're going to play along with him. So they start to feed him material, and he gets this group of 10 people. Now, the key to the WikiLeaks thing is he claims that one of the people that he's dealing with is John Podesta. And what you see in the emails that were leaked by WikiLeaks is a confirmation of this fact, that he wasn't in fact dealing with John Podesta. And
Grant, I have to ask, how in the world did this musician come into play at all? Where did he decide? How did he get involved to this level? I mean, that's very strange.
This is a story that he went to these high-level government people. He figured that he could get.
How did he get to them to begin with, though?
Well, he just made contacts because he's a famous rocker. A lot of people
his celeb status, yeah, right,
yeah. And they would just sort of listen to him. And so, like, for example, he tells a story to John Podesta. So he phones up John Podesta, gets his phone number, and he had actually campaigned for Hillary Clinton 8 years ago when she ran. So he has, sort of Democratic connections. But he gets John Podesta's phone number, and he tells the story. It's not in the WikiLeaks emails, although we're waiting for this. He tells the story. I think it's on the Jimmy Church show. He says, "I phoned up John Podesta, and he made his appeal. I'm the guy to release this stuff. I can get to the young people. I've got this big empire, and do you guys need me?" and all this kind of stuff. And he said, "John's just listening." And he gets to the end of his little sales speech, and he says, "John hasn't said anything." And so he says, "Okay, well, thank you for your time." And John Podesta says, "Well, I'm kind of busy. Give me a phone call back in a couple of months." So Tom DeLonge hangs up, figuring this is a total waste of time. Podesta just thought he was some crazy musician guy, and ignored him. So he didn't phone John back, and he said, and this is what the emails we're waiting for. We haven't seen these emails yet. He says on the Jimmy Church show, I think he says, a couple months later, he said, suddenly there was a flurry of emails in my box from John Podesta. And he said, "Okay, I'm ready to play this game. This is of extreme significance, and I need you to come to Washington." So these are the ones we're waiting for, because John Podesta did actually send emails that had said that kind of stuff, that he was willing to go along with this group of 10 people who is going to try to do this disclosure initiative through this rock musician. This is going to be extremely important. But what does show up in the WikiLeaks emails is particularly one meeting, which is sort of the crux of this whole thing. And it takes place on January the 25th of this year. And what happens is Tom DeLonge sends an email, and you can see these emails, and he says, "I've got two of my team." He calls them his team, almost like Greer, same thing. He's like, "My team," or if you remember back with Bill Moore, he had his team, like everybody's working for him, and this real strong ego. And he said, "I got these two guys I'd like to meet, and I might bring Steven Spielberg along."
How is this any bigger than the citizens' hearing on disclosure? And 10 people?
Well, but he's there's this initiative to get this out. Like, if you see one of the emails, he actually has Steven Spielberg on the list. He has all these Hollywood people who he claims are playing the game, that are going to help him put out books, movies, all this kind of stuff to get the message out. So there's this plan behind the scenes of how they're going to drop this this disclosure thing, and he's going to help the government get this thing out. So this meeting takes place, and it's a Google Hangout meeting. It takes place January the 25th of this year. And what happens is he names the guys, and one is this Robert Weiss, who's the head of Lockheed Skunk Works, and John Podesta. They send the arrangement, like John Podesta's secretary sends out the email, which has these guys' emails on them, and basically saying the meeting's from 12:30 till 1:30, January 25th, Google Hangout. So Podesta's secretary is there, Podesta's there, Tom DeLonge is there, Robert Weiss, the head of Lockheed Skunk Works, is there, a guy by the name of William Neal McCaslin, who ran the lab at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where they supposedly zipped the Roswell material. And he ran this lab for 2 years, and he is copied on this meeting. And the third major guy is another general, like the guy from Wright-Patterson, who was a major general. Then there's this other general who was the assistant head of the U.S. Air Force Space Command and in Colorado, and he's in the meeting. And so this basically confirms that this thing took place. Now, the Rolling Stone magazine wrote it up, and they basically said, well, we don't really know if this meeting took place. I mean, there was these emails that showed there was a meeting. But later in the day, Tom DeLonge writes to John Podesta, and he said, well, McCaslin was coming across as a skeptic, but he's not a skeptic. He's actually helping me put this group together. He's one of the key guys, and he has to say that in public. And then the other important email that comes is, and I always tell it's a funny story, because when John Podesta was in the Clinton White House, he was actually, at one point, he talks about the fact that he'd always go and watch X-Files. He was fascinated with X-Files, and that he actually at one point phoned Area 51 to find what was going on. So what happens is after this January 25th meeting, a month later, Tom DeLonge sends an email, which is in the WikiLeaks emails, to John, and he says, I just got an email from Robert Weiss, and he wants to know if you have any follow-up. And if you have any little bit of information, you can release whatever it is, help me out. So what you basically have now is you have the head of Area 51 now contacting John Podesta. Before John Podesta was contacting Area 51, but you have the head of Lockheed Skunk Works going and saying, is there any update? Which indicated that during the January the 25th meeting, John Podesta had agreed to do something or to look up something or to check something. And Robert Weiss a month later is saying, is there any update? What's going on? What's the deal? And then I think it was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday the email was leaked from McCaslin, who is this guy from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And Tom DeLonge sends this email and says, I was talking to the general, and he had suggestions for how to make the disclosure. And then he quotes him like about maybe 12 lines on what the government should do to get this out, how it should be a memo from the White House. They should link together all the different agencies like the National Academy of Sciences, NASA, White House, and all these people all at the same time. So it's not just one agency releasing. And basically you have him quoting this general on how to do UFO disclosure. So these are kind of emails that are coming, and it's just dramatic to watch every day, especially the Tom DeLonge one, because all these names are being mentioned of high-level people. Like, for example, he said that he was going to bring Steven Spielberg to the White House, not to the White House, to John Podesta to meet with him, and that Spielberg's DreamWorks was actually a part of this whole initiative to get out the message.
I'm sorry, I'm just in shock.
Yeah. Help me on this one, Grant. I read somewhere that Mitchell, who I'm under the understanding died earlier this year, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. February, I think he died.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But he was he founded a firm or business which supposedly studies alien technology. Is that?
They were working on it. They shut the company down. Well, it was more the technology. It was more the consciousness aspect of this whole thing, where they believe that. So they're sort of helping people who are working in that field of consciousness to understand the holographic universe and all this kind of stuff. And there is actually one email which is very interesting. I think it was written by Carrie Mansfield, and I wrote her. She didn't reply about it, but they didn't get the meeting. But in one of the emails, she said she's talking to John Podesta, and she said Edgar Mitchell has consulted with a number of presidents on consciousness. And I went, wow. I mean, it's like he's actually interacted with presidents on the subject of consciousness, which I say is the key thing behind the UFO thing. If you understand what's going on, how they use the mind to fly the craft, and the craft's alive, and all this kind of stuff, and all the telepathy that takes place. So here you have this, because we've all heard the rumor that some high-level people, and one of the rumors I heard was Bush Sr. had actually talked to Edgar Mitchell and sort of briefed him or told him, this stuff's for real. So we always knew that Edgar Mitchell had gotten some sort of, he called them the senior boys or the old timers or something that had told him this was thing for real. But in this one email, it's actually confirmed, except Terry wouldn't go any farther, was the fact that he had actually consulted with a number of presidents on consciousness.
So do you feel that it sounds like it's fairly eminent, but do you feel like this is something that will take another few years in order for the public to really get a feel for everything that Spielberg would be accomplishing? I mean, he would have to either make a very large project. I mean, it seems like they take for years to make movies anyway, but do you feel that it would be maybe a 1 year, 2 year, 5 year project?
Well, I used to say it'd be 2042 before this would all take place, because there's so many complicated issues that are involved. then I know some of the people. In fact, I believe I know the guy who's running Tom DeLonge's group. He's never mentioned the guy yet. He's a guy out of Washington. He's a civilian. And there's a third group of people who are in contact. I say there's three levels. There's the John Podesta initiative where he's got Hillary Clinton's going to do some sort of disclosure thing. Then there's Tom DeLonge's group. Then there's this third group, and I know a number of people in this third group. And what they're telling me, they're sort of linking up the fact that they're in contact with DeLonge's group, and there seems to be some crossovers, especially the head guy. And what they're telling me is January. First they told me 3 years. Now they're saying January. And when this thing all started to leak, when the WikiLeaks started to leak, I would have thought you would have assumed that they would run for cover. And exactly the opposite has happened. What the people I'm talking to are saying is that the green light's on, and they were saying watch January, which I guess sort of indicates watch if Hillary gets elected. And Tom DeLonge, in the last couple of days, he said the same thing. It's bigger than it was before. And so what I think has happened, or I'm pretty sure what's happened, is they have all these different groups. So Tom DeLonge has got this military group that he's dealing with, these generals, Lockheed Skunk Works. Then there's a group of scientists that are working on it. There's a group of government civilian people who John Podesta would be part, and this other guy that I know. And then there's the media group. So there would be the people like Spielberg and people in there. So you have all these different people. And some of the people we already sort of knew. I mean, I can expose some of them because Tom DeLonge is coming out with a book in March. He's brought out a nonfiction book. And that's how you release disclosure type stuff. Like the CIA, you fictionalize a book and you release your ideas through there and protect the classified material. So he's released the fiction book. Now in March, he's got a nonfiction book out, and the forward to the book is being written by Jacques Vallée. So I can say that Jacques Vallée is part of this. And, and what I've heard, I wrote a book called UFOs Area 51 and Government Informants, where I say it has been going on for 50 years. I mean, Walt Disney, the movie UFO in 1955, had Air Force consultants. Bob Emenegger, my friend, a documentary for Richard Nixon. They've been doing this gradual leaking stuff. And in the 80s, they had this group called the Avery, which was the birds, and there was, all these secret guys releasing stuff through Bill Moore. And what I've heard is some of the same names, as if the birds are recycling through. And these are people like Kit Green and people like that, who are CIA people who are rumored to be a part of this initiative. So it's not just 10 people from Tom DeLonge. I would say, I know 10 people, and I know a couple of Tom DeLonge's people. I would say there's probably 30 people involved in this thing. It's a major type thing that's going on in the background. And what I'm told, the latest thing I've heard is watch January.
So when it comes down to Tom DeLonge, obviously he's an experiencer or an abductee or a contactee. Yeah. But you're saying that he has a very negative connotation towards these extraterrestrial biological entities. He's claiming that they are more of I'm going to come to Earth and control everything, or I am on Earth and we will take over. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, the quote I can quote him on, he said, UFOs are bad news. And someone Jimmy Church, if you listen to the Jimmy Church interview, Jimmy Church said they were at Contact in the Desert, and he said, we all saw this UFO, and what do you think? And he said, you shouldn't be watching it, because it's baiting you, it's grabbing you, and you're going to get dragged into this thing. So he's got this real sort of negative connotation. He was raised real religious, and then when he started to tour with his band, he started running into all these other religions. And a lot of times you get kids who are like 15, 16, 17, where they suddenly become atheists. And I think that's what happened to him. He sort of lost this whole idea about religion, that it's a big con game. And then he tied it in through Jacques Vallée with this idea that religion, the basis of religion, is misinterpreting UFO or phenomena or, ancient alien, that sort of idea.
Right.
And that, this whole idea that the aliens will deal with whoever survives. And it's a total nonsense theory, because if you actually look at the 20th century, religion really is, like he says, there's more people killed by religion or by Christians than any other thing. And that's not true. If you look at the 20th century, the vast majority of the genocides in the 20th century were by humanist, communist countries, like Cambodia, it's 1/3 of the people, 78 million people in China, 20 million people in Russia. There was no religion there at all. These were humanist governments. So it's sort of a wacky theory, and I don't really care about his theory, except that it could initiate what you've heard about this thing about the false flag, where von Braun said, first you're going to say terrorism, and then they're going to introduce the evil alien invasion from outer space. And what's going to happen, that's why I'm writing a paper, is I don't want Tom DeLonge, because he's got a lot of influence, and he does have these people. He is telling the truth. He's got these people. And if his theory gets dropped into the American public in a vacuum, without anything to counter it, everybody's going to suddenly believe these are evil aliens. I mean, these are, we got to shoot them down. And even if you say, I said, aliens aren't poison Skittles. Even if you can say 3% of them are evil, well, then you're still going to be shooting everything down, because it might be one of the 3%. And that's the fear to me, is that if this gets dropped into a vacuum where people don't know what's going on, there could be some problems. And so that's basically where it's at. He does have a very negative view of this, but most people don't know that.
That is ridiculous, actually, because I swear, everybody that I talk to, and I'm talking experiencers, I've had one person, and we actually had him on the show, that was super, super negative. Almost everybody else that I've talked to, experiencer-wise, has a more a broad understanding that there are multiple agendas, there are multiple entities, there are a lot more, maybe not really negative entities, but indifferent or interested, but not really wanting to completely take over, but maybe assimilate. Or and that sort of scares me in a way, but the whole idea that Tom believes that it's super negative and that we're going to be just demolished by these entities, I think is a little drastic. I think that we should go towards disclosure of the information that we have, because having all the pieces will help us finish the puzzle and help humanity understand that, yes, we're not alone. But I do feel that there are multiple beings, and I don't think that they're all connected. So, maybe there are beings that he's involved with that are negative, but I don't think it's all that way. I mean, everybody that I talk to, he just seems like maybe one person with a little bit of influence that has taken it to that level. Yeah. I do think disclosure is very necessary, and I do think it's imminent, but it's very shocking to hear that this guy is on the edge of his seat wanting to disclose his aspect of this, whatever his view is. It sounds very negative, and that's a little shocking to me, because that's not my experience in this.
And yet when he talks consciousness, he's right on the mark. He has this other thing where he has he apparently, I guess, with Weiss, when he brought up consciousness, they said, now you're talking. This is important. And he has this idea, that everything's connected, everything's one. So the consciousness thing, he understands that everybody has the sort of the little connection inside themselves to the oneness of the universe. And, and so he has that down. And the other thing that to mention in this regard is that Podesta can't be going along with this, because I think what they're doing is they're sort of not using him, but managing him to get some sort of message out. Because Podesta has said numerous times, I think people can handle the truth. So it can't be what Podesta's going to be bringing out if he does something is not the aliens are here to eat us. I mean, people wouldn't be able to handle that. It's got to be just basically like the core story. They're here.
Well, how many people have they eaten as of right now? Because I don't know any.
Yeah, well, exactly. But that's the sort of scenario because Tom DeLonge, that's his quote: "UFOs are bad news."
Well,
he's very adamant about that.
Well, it geez Louise, bad news? Okay. All right.
Yeah. So,
right.
I mean,
if they're eating people, I guess that is pretty bad news. But like I said, I don't know anybody that's been eaten.
Yeah. So we've got a couple weeks left to go, and there's like 15,000 emails to come, and we'll see what happens.
Well, we will definitely keep up with you on that. That is, it seems like a very terrifying and strenuous work.
We're down to, I'm going to give you a couple more minutes, Grant, and to echo Tiffany's point, we're really into what you're doing. So this is our invitation to have you come on periodically and keep us up to date as well. And let's ride this train together. But two things I want to throw at you before we let you go. What is, in 2 minutes, 2 questions, what is truly the Vatican's knowledge or awareness? And if WikiLeaks Julian Assange has this info, why wouldn't Assange be the one who just blows it up and takes all the credit? So,
okay, I'll do the first question. I'll talk to the Vatican, then you have to repeat the second question. But the Vatican, all I know about the Vatican is Danny Sheehan, who I know, confirmed that he made 2 approaches to the Vatican Library for material for the President of the United States. He was turned down on both occasions. So they know something. I'm not sure whether they know anything more than you and I, because what I would say is that this thing is way beyond anything that we understand it, because when it gets into consciousness and how these ships work, if you've ever listened to Chris Bledsoe tell the story of how he flew the ship, I mean, you can tell this is very, very complex, how it's not just a simple engine type thing. It involves mind, it involves the ship changing size and just incredibly complex arrangements. So that kind of stuff the Vatican's not going to know. But I know that the Vatican was very interested in Chris Bledsoe.
I love Chris. Oh my God.
The Jesuits that run the observatory in Arizona actually invited him. I don't know if Chris ever went. I think he was supposed to go. And there was a Roman Catholic professor from the University of North Carolina who actually discovered Chris before I did. She discovered Chris at a meeting in Asheville, North Carolina, and so they have a theory that ties in because Chris is involved with the Shining Lady, and that sort of ties the religious aspect to the alien aspect. So I think that's the way the Roman Catholics would see it, is they are more interested in this religious aspect of the Shining Lady that a number of people have described, where they start talking about angels combined with aliens and stuff like that. But as you know, who knows what they really know? I'm sure they don't know the real details. I don't think anybody really knows the real details. It's like Thomas Edison said, we don't understand 1/1,000,000 to 1% about anything. And your second question about Assange, about whether he's going to take credit for this, I think Assange, to me, he's very much like John Podesta. He's an open government guy. He believes that we should have everything out, and he was leaking George Bush's stuff. Now he's going after the Democrats, and I believe he's and in fact, I say the WikiLeaks is a prime example of what a lot of disclosure is going to be about, is because the main thing with the aliens is they're telepathic. So you're going to have a situation where there are no secrets, where everybody can read everybody's mind. And it would be great if everybody just put their, Trump and the Republicans and everybody put all the congressmen put their email on the table with the password, and you could read everybody's. Because right now you got the Hillary Clinton campaign, they're probably watching everything they say and everything they do, because it's like telepathy. They think everybody knows what they're doing now, and everybody else can still hide behind their emails. So this is actually a good thing for me, this WikiLeaks thing. It's almost the way it's going to be after disclosure, where you can go and watch a president speak and you know what he's thinking, because telepathy will be part of the game. And that's maybe what they're trying to cover up, is this telepathy part of the thing that you really don't want exposed if you're a politician.
There you go.
Wow.
All right.
Okay, so you're watching my Facebook. If you see something that looks really interesting and you want just an update on one thing, just let me know. Every day it's posted, and you can track it and see if you need to get more information down the road. The election's 11 days or something away? Or whatever it is, 13 days.
Yeah.
So go out and vote.
All the emails will be out before the election, because it doesn't help to have the emails leak after the election. The idea is to hurt Hillary Clinton. So all these emails will be out by the election time.
Okay. Right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us that information. We will definitely get back with you and have you on again, like Kevin says. And it's amazing that this stuff is so close. I can almost taste it. It's so close. I can't wait for this to happen and just like really get some better information and really start hearing what the government knows, and when that kind of information is just golden. So
yep.
We're just waiting on the end of our seats or the edge of our seats. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for your interest.
Thank you.
Thanks,
okay,
Grant.
talk to you.
Have a good.
Take care, bro.
Bye-bye.
Wow, Tiff.
Oh
you
my
know
gosh.
What? A song just came into my mind.
What was it? What song?
The song. We're so excited, and we just can't hide it. All right. So, and now I need you as the producer of the show. I need you. I always need you, dear. But I need you right now to get Phil Siracusa on.
Phil? Yeah, I got him. Okay, hold on.
All right. So when you do it, let's see. I'll see if you do it. Mm-hmm. Anyways, but yeah, we. I think you.
I tell you what. He was mentioning Chris Bledsoe, and
I know, and Chris is going to be
one
on,
of my buddies. Right? I know he's getting ready to be on our show soon, and I can't wait for it because this guy. He is amazing, and he's the real deal. And I tell you what, when he's talking about the Vatican and all this stuff, Chris has been one to sort of help me get back into this whole religious phase of my life. Even though my girls go to Catholic school and we are Catholic, it really does. He's really sort of brought all of this back together and really just sort of initiated me looking into the ET reality further and how it connects to our past and all that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I think that Phil is on. Phil?
Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you doing?
Good,
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm with my wife, Julie.
Hi, Julie.
Julie.
How are you?
Good.
Hi.
So we just left with our guest Grant Cameron, and we were talking about the ET reality and how we are having our governments. We're getting ready to go through this whole disclosure project. So we're going to end that and bring on you guys to discuss some very, very spooky Halloween stuff. So Kevin, why don't you introduce them for us?
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of chatting with Phil in the past. Phil and Julia Siracusa. They have company in their home. They've had company in their home. Not good company, kind of scary company.
I've had a lot of company in my home. What kind of company are we talking about?
Yeah, well, Phil, jump right in, brother.
Well, the kind of company you're talking about is evil entities. Some people call them demons. Some people call them evil spirits. That's exactly what we're dealing with. So that's what's in the Horsefly Chronicles home. This became a well-known documented case, and I continue to bring the best people forward within the paranormal community to come to my home, validate, investigate. Don't take my word or my wife's word. You come here for yourself, and you see what we're dealing with, and this is where we are today.
So tell us a little bit about Did you buy this house because you knew it was haunted, or are you an investigator? What's your background?
I'm not a psychic. I'm not a medium. I'm not a paranormal investigator. I'm a person that has a lot of memory and has been followed by spiritual attachments since the day I was born. And I'm 49 years old, so back in the 60s and 70s, if you tell your mom or dad you've seen a shadow, it was dismissed because no one really.
It was the boogeyman.
Exactly. And when you have nightmares, it's dismissed as well, but the nightmares became night tremors. So the older I became, I felt like the older these dark attachments became within my life because the shadows got darker. But then again, as a teenager, growing up through the 80s in New York, I try to dismiss a lot of this stuff as well. And that's how it got started. And then in the late 80s, I remember doing the Ouija board to try to contact what was actually following me with a couple of friends. First, nothing happened. But then we broke through, and then something was coming through that board. And, sometimes you think it's psychosomatic or power of suggestion. You don't really believe what's happening. But I can tell anyone, without a doubt, that the spiritual world is alive within the physical world, and evil entities do exist. I don't see demons for face value. My walls don't bleed, and my furniture does not fly through the air. However, when you make contact with the unknown will make contact with you. This house happens to be a stronghold. So I've lived in over 10 different locations between New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. We've been living here for like 6 years now. Now, this particular home, it's like a stronghold. Anything that possibly could happen would happen here. That's unexplainable. I know you think it's your light bulbs or the electricity or hallucinations or whatever it is, That's when I began 3 years ago to have paranormal teams come here and hopefully debunk or dismiss what we were making our claims of what we were seeing. And unfortunately, they came forward and says, no, you're dealing with things beyond your recognition of pure evil. So, a lot of things in the demonic world is theory. Let's face it. You're not going to see anything for face value straight on. However, when you hear the whispers and the growls and you get the marks, and then you start to wonder what exactly is happening here and are we actually alone in the home? You're not. They're here with us.
Okay, so tell us, I'm going to pause you right there for a second. So you're talking about like scratches and stuff like that. Tell me exactly from the first time that you remember as a child, this entity, is it one entity or is it multiple, first of all?
It's multiple entities and multiple.
Okay. So when you were a child, what were the first things that happened that made you think, oh, this is not normal?
Okay, well, let me explain this and try to comprehend what I'm about to say. I was listening to you guys for the last half hour. We're not alone. Plain and simple. We're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at 7 years old, I remember being in my bed, and I felt like my spiritual body was being lifted from my physical body. And again, 7 years old, who's going to understand that? I wasn't even understanding what was happening. I was pulled over a place upstate New York with this being who had a white helmet on. And he gave me comfort, and I asked him to take off the helmet, and he says, I can't, but I have to tell you things. And he didn't talk. It was through the mind. So he didn't look much older than me, maybe 7, 8, 9 years old, but I couldn't make a distinction on his face. He said, in years to come, this property, upstate New York, is the property that your family will purchase. And this will be a vacation home for you. And he was saying that we're not alone in the universe. And throughout life, he was going to visit me. Now, the next day I woke up, and I thought it was a bad dream. I remember telling my parents that this being with the white helmet on. Well, there's an interconnection and intertwine between the demonic world and the alien world. And I could say that for a fact.
I agree.
That was my first encounter. And, now, like, I look back at the clock. I'm 49, and I go backwards in my life. And I look at every single thing that has happened to me and my family, and it's like putting a puzzle together. And what I could tell the world is this. I don't need Fox News or CNN or anybody, even my own government, saying we're alone or we're not alone. Listen, when you've had these encounters like myself, you seem to realize that it's no longer psychosomatic or power of what anybody's saying to you. You have your own experiences. And that was my first encounter with the other side.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I do feel like the ET reality and the paranormal, supernatural, the spiritual realm are connected. And sometimes I feel that sometimes the terminology gets very fuzzy in this world, and people don't really know what to call it. So tell me a little bit more about how the negativity came into your life, because that sounded sort of positive or neutral.
That was neutral, exactly. Now, again, as I was explaining that, in the mid-'80s, I would see these dark shadows living in Staten Island, New York, and there'd be a lot of family tension, with, it was 8 of us in the home, and a lot of negative energy, and being Italian, people fight and argue and all this other stuff. It's like a cultural thing, But that Ouija board, when something came through, it was like threatening us. And again, you don't know who's moving it when you talk to friends. You think you're moving it, someone else is moving it. You don't really get it. But what's actually happening is this, and I want to make this very clear to yourself and the world. Demons, spirits, whatever you want to call them, negative energy, however you want to label it, they're way ahead of us than what we can comprehend. Our lifespan is no more than 70 to 100 years old, where these entities have been around for tens of thousands of years. So when we try to comprehend what they're actually doing or making us do, it's far beyond our reality. And what I started to realize as time went on and I grew older is that they can bring you down the wrong path in life without you even knowing what's happening to you. And it's sort of like a magnet, okay? You take two magnets, one's positive and one's negative. It's as if you're being pulled into the negative magnet, and it keeps drawing you in. And when it does that, it can bring your life into turmoil. And again, I'm thick-headed. I wasn't really getting it. I was not understanding it. But what I was doing is continuously doing the Ouija board with my friends to try to make contact with what I thought was just one or maybe two spirits, if it was. And then I remember I have a friend. His mother was a well-known psychic in Staten Island. And I talked to her one day. I was 17 years old. I'm like, what's happening? She goes, what's happening to you is you're a lighthouse. You're not a medium or psychic. You're a lighthouse to these things. And they know that you can communicate with them through your thought process. If a man is blind and he's deaf and he can't talk, and people would ask, well, can he still communicate with the spiritual world? The answer is yes, because they read your thoughts. They read what you think. So you don't have to see or talk or even hear them because they're present.
That's interesting.
And I started to realize that the older I became. So what was actually happening now is I was getting pulled into a world of darkness, a world where I was one with the Ouija board, doing it alone because I wanted full contact with these entities.
But did you want the contact after you'd had your first experiences?
Yes.
Was it sort of a confirmation that these things were really happening?
Yes.
Okay. So bring us a little bit further in time then. Tell us about maybe, I'm guessing that was sort of young teenager or?
Yes, so let me just backtrack a little bit. Now I want you to really follow this, okay? Back to the first segment when you had this gentleman on about we're not alone. He's right. Mm-hmm. At the age of 14 years old, it was a beautiful summer day. And here's the intertwine between both aliens and demons. I remember I was hanging out. There's like 50 kids in the neighborhood. I had to go home and use the bathroom. Packed neighborhood, beautiful summer day, the best that you could possibly imagine. And I'm walking in the main street, and I was stopped through my mind. And I felt like I couldn't move, like I was almost paralyzed, but I could only hear things through my thoughts. And the being that was in my life when I was 7 years old says to me these words through mental telepathy without me seeing anything. Are you having a good time in your life? And I replied back, yes, good, because this is where you will wind up when your life journey is complete. Now, at that point, after he gave that statement through my mind, I remember my friends and cars trying to get by, and my friends were trying to get me out of the street, and then I was released. So I was puzzled. Again, as a 14-year-old, I wasn't realizing what was happening to me. And at that point, I didn't even have to use the bathroom anymore. I just went back to hang out with my friends thinking that it was just some kind of hallucination. I don't know what was happening to me. Now, fast forward a little bit. In 1989, I was starting to have these premonitions of things that were going to happen in my life. Let me just say that my family in 1977 did purchase that property upstate New York. Long and behold, what they showed me was in the vision of the lake and what we were hovering over a dam through like a levitation type of, we weren't on the ground. These entities, they're very real. And somehow it's part of a learning curve, but yet some of us like myself, again, I'm not a psychic or a medium, and I'm an investigator, but we're lighthouses that the spiritual world knows we can connect with them. So then 1991, I began playing with the book of Gosha. I purchased it in New York City. It's the book based of King Solomon. And I was drawn to this book that was locked in the showcase. I remember seeing the owner of the store. His name was Herman Slater. He was like a Wiccan. And I was drawn to understanding the practice of magic and how I can actually better communicate with these entities because the Ouija board was bringing me to a dead end. And the book probably was one of the biggest mistakes of my life because I was warned not to buy it, but I took it anyway. And what it did was this. Remember when I talked about like entities are a step ahead of us? Well, there are multiple steps. I found myself trying to understand these dialogues that were in the book to make it almost manifest within the physical world. And when you do that, it's not hocus pocus, but what actually happens is that within your own reality, you're bringing in multiple entities that are not visual to the naked eye, but yet they're there. And at one of the sessions I did, I was performing my own rituals. Again, I was a person who was trying to contact these things, understand why they were following me from years prior, and if there was connections to them and any kind of alien race. And what was actually happening is I remember conjuring, or at least trying to summon all 72 demons from the Book of Gosha, starting from Beelzebub down.
Okay, wait a minute. Why on earth would you do that?
Because this is what I was drawn into.
Okay.
I was being pulled now.
Okay, so you're being pulled that direction, and you feel like you don't have any control, and it was doing it to you.
Yeah, it's
correct?
like you have to make a decision, right from wrong, but yet you think the wrong decision is the right decision.
I got you. Okay, I'm going with you.
Demons are masterminds of manipulation.
They're manipulative. Yes, I got you. Okay, go on.
So what they think and can do is far beyond what we do. We couldn't even understand. And that's why I began with this book. And, I didn't believe in it, quite frankly. And then at the time, I was a bouncer. And I remember being at the club. And this is how powerful now the spiritual world is and that actual book. I remember a man coming into the club. And, the bar was owned by organized crime. But we had a confrontation, and I knew that I wasn't going to win the confrontation. So days later, I went to the book, and I took 2 Matchbox cars, and I just said, you know what? Let me just see if I could put this guy into a car accident. And that's how I was starting to become slowly evil within that world. I made these cars T-bone, just thinking about it, reading a passageway, and making them crash. A couple days later, that accident took place in Brooklyn, New York. Now, some people say it's coincidence. Some people say, well, that's maybe a hardcore fact. At first, I thought it was coincidence. I didn't believe that I actually was able to have this connection with these evil entities. But as time went on, I started to do more rituals and more bad practice towards my rivals. And what I started to realize is this, that evil likes evil things. Evil finds your weakest link within the human soul. And when you start to tamper with these things, they pull you into a degree where now you're theirs. You're a vessel to the spiritual world.
Yeah.
To a point where it's no longer yourself. You are a vessel to them to do their work.
Right.
Because again, let's face it, demon is not going to show himself and face value and destroy somebody in the physical world. That's not going to happen. But what they can do, and that what was done to me, is that they will take us and use us against people, and that builds their negative energy within the physical boundaries of how we live.
Bill, take us now. I'm going to jump a little bit, and if it's okay, let's go there. When did the wife, and she could answer it, did you all connect, come in, at what point, how long has it been since the two of you been together and, went on your, this little trip that you're going on?
Okay. So 1991, is when my life started going all the way into the paranormal, as far as trying to understand it, working with it. Now, when I was doing the Ouija board, my parents had purchased this new home. That, again, was in one of my visions in 1989. It's that now in a very big home, and new home too. And I remember it was me, my sister, my ex-girlfriend, and my oldest sister. And I said, you know what? There's something in this house. It's just in my room. I keep hearing a female girl, but I don't see anything. So we started to use the Ouija board again at that point to try to make contact with this spirit, this one particular spirit. And let me tell you, I still get the goosebumps. She goes, on the board, I took my fingers off the plankette. My older sister was using it alone at this time. My name is Sarah, and I'm here to stay. And I says, well, who is Sarah? She goes, I'm the girl who you're going to bring into the physical world. Now, I thought I was actually arguing with my older sister, thinking she was moving it. I was like, come on, let's cut it out now. You know what I'm saying? So the light in the kitchen flickered and whatnot. And then she puts her fingers back on the plankette. And then I says, okay, prove it. Because I don't believe the board is actually communicating with whatever's there. Prove this, that you're here. So I says to my mom, do me a favor, go upstairs into your bedroom and do something. And if this spirit named Sarah is really here, she's going to tell us what's happening. So my mom goes upstairs and she's doing something in the bedroom alone. And the spirit of Sarah is telling us on the board, your mom opened up her top drawer, put a napkin over a pink hairbrush. So my mom comes down and she told us exactly what she did after it was spelled out on the board. Now, Again, I would blame my older sister, saying, is this a trick, yada, yada, yada. And Sarah goes, I'm going to prove another thing. You need to go outside and look at your mom's car because there's a problem with it. There's a rock between the muffler and the bottom of the car. It was a little red Hyundai. So we all went outside, and sure enough, there's this rock holding the muffler down that's almost hitting the ground. I started to realize that Sarah's real, and that was frightening, and that was scary. Because let me tell you something, my friend. When a spirit knows your every move and what's happening within your home of your family, you realize that there's no more invisibility to its own eye. It waits, it watches, it listens. And she had made it very, very clear. She's not here to harm myself or my family, but she's not leaving either. So as years went on of my life, this is a scratch on the surface because we don't have a whole day to tell the story, but I had multiple relationships. And Sarah, again, in that beginning statement says she wanted to be born. So one incident was that I was with a girl and she's like, let's have a child, let's get engaged. And she got pregnant. And a couple of weeks later, she goes, I can't do this. I can't have this. I was like, what's wrong? She goes, it doesn't feel right. So we went on the board. We went on the board and just talked to the spirit, Sarah. She goes, if you don't have this child, you will never be allowed back into this home. So she got the board. She threw it. I laughed at her. Everybody's nuts at this point. Well, let me tell you that every time she tried to come back into the home after having an abortion, she got heat rashes so bad that she had to leave. And we thought it was maybe an allergic reaction to the dog or something. But as it went on, she could never, that was the end of it. That was the end of the relationship. I started to get scared and realized that Sarah's very powerful now. Very, very powerful. Some of the stuff that we try to understand and try to comprehend, is it real? Is it true? This one particular spirit, if people ask me today, is she dark? Is she evil? I think she's in the middle. So in 1999, she goes in my mind now, this girl. Now, this is how aliens and entities are very close and interconnected because they talk through our minds to us when they want to do a full communication. She says, you're going to go out with your sister tonight to a club, and she's going to come. And I says, who? She goes, the right one. So we're in a jam-packed club. It was a Saturday night called Silo on Norfolk Hill Road in Staten Island. And I had a couple of drinks in me. And in my mind, she goes, that's her, Sarah. I got pushed from nothing. I got pushed into this girl who spilt over a drink, and that's my wife today. Now, people ask me, is this possible that a spirit could actually do this? The answer is yes, but the story gets more twisted.
Tiffany, let's turn your aunt's phone on. We've got Tiffany's aunt. It's Debbie. Your aunt. She's Debbie to me, right? She's not my
aunt Debbie.
Yeah. Your aunt Debbie, just my Debbie to me.
Yeah. Okay. So we have Debi Dougherty online, and she also has lived in a few haunted houses. We are going to add her to the conversation. Debi, tell us about some of your experiences in your haunted houses.
My earliest experience was probably in my parents' house. Although they lived in a new subdivision, it was in Valley Station. At a really early age, I was probably 3 or 4, I remember telling my mother that I was looking outside and an angel came in front of my door. And I walked in the other room and I told my mom, I said, there was an angel on the front porch, and her and her friends all laughed at me, and they're like, there's no angel on the front porch. But it also occurred probably right after my great-grandmother died, probably within a week. And I think that was probably my earliest recollection of it. Just nothing really so much in that house until we moved to our house in southern Indiana, which, of course, you have been to.
Yes, and I had a lot of experiences there because I swear to God, my skin crawled inside your house and the hairs on the back of my neck. I actually never wanted to stay there. I never wanted to spend the night. So go on in your experiences.
And didn't want to do it again. I'm not sure, again, I think I'm like you. I think that house is probably on a vortex, but I also think that some people are really sensitive to it and other people are not sensitive to it. Because when I was little, I could hear voices, I could hear people talking, and I would ask my mom, who's that talking? I don't hear anybody. And I was probably some degree of clairaudient, and I'm really highly sensitive. So, as a nurse and a nurse practitioner, that's a bad thing, because you can really tune in to people's good emotions and bad emotions. But the first time I ever recall it in the house is I was working there in the house by myself, and my husband had gone to work, and the kids weren't there. And I was cleaning the kitchen, and I walked into the front of the house, and I came back, and every kitchen cabinet door was open. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. Maybe they're just, the wind blew or something. So I shut them all. And I walked upstairs, and I walked back down, and all of the kitchen cabinets were open again. So I shut them all, and I was doing laundry, and the washing machine turned off, but the dryer turned on. And then I turned the dryer off, and then I turned the washing machine back on, and I walked in, and the stove was on, and all the kitchen cabinet doors were open. And I knew right away. I told my husband, Dale, I was like, there is something going on with this house. This house is haunted. But nothing for a while that was like you could really put your finger on it. And the one that stuck out in my mind that was probably the most significant for me was I had just gotten home from working as a nurse, and the two boys ran. We had a creek across the street that the boys would catch crawdads in. And my youngest son, Aaron, I walked upstairs with him, and I was putting him to the bed. And somebody grabbed me by the neck and started pulling me, and literally pulled me over to the window. And I heard this voice, help them. And I knew immediately what was going to happen. I saw a car coming, and I saw the two little boys running in the creek with our dog. And I ran down as fast as I could. I opened up the front door. I said, stop. And the dog ran out the street, and the two boys looked up at me and didn't step out in front of the car, and the dog eventually died. She got hit and killed.
Yeah.
But that was like the first thing. And I thought, well, that's kind of odd. But shortly after that, I was putting on my makeup, and I hear this voice in behind me. And it's a woman, and I could hear her talking, and I just said, what is your name? And she said, Lizzie. So my next door neighbor had lived, my house was probably 100 years old, but it had been on a homestead for approximately 150 years. The old house had been torn down, and a new house had been built on it. But my next door neighbor was in his late 80s, and I asked him who lived in the house. And he said, well, there was, I forget what the guy's name was, but it stuck out so much in my head. He said the old woman there, her name was Elizabeth Rogers, but everyone called her Lizzie, which just piqued my interest, because I was like, that has to be who it is. And as you know, the only time I've ever seen a full-body apparition was I was laying in bed one night, and I opened my eyes, and there was a woman with gray hair in period dress. She was in a white high-collared shirt and a black skirt, and she was looking out on the side lawn, and that was where the old homestead had been built. And she turned around from the window, and we had a street light, and so I could see her, and it wasn't like she was see-through. This was like a real person. She walked right past my bed, and I'm trying to hit my husband to wake him up, and I could see that she was dragging her leg, and she walked right to the top of the steps to turn and go down, and she disappeared. So, of course, I had to ask my next-door neighbor. I said, Raleigh, did Lizzie die in the house? And he said, oh, yeah, she died in the house. She was laid out in our front yard, our front room, in our what was the parlor then. And we've had multiple people say that they saw someone there, and one of them is our mutual friend, Donnie Dearson. He and his wife were laying on a couch sleeping at our house one night at the very place where she was laid out. And I don't even think he knew anything about what was going on in the house. And he woke up the next day, and he said, your house is haunted. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, all night long, someone kept jerking the sheets, the blankets off of me, and I'd pull them back up, and he said it was from the end of the bed, and I thought it was you and Dale playing a joke on me, but they would jerk our covers off. But and then my son Ian was probably 3 when he told me that there was a little boy that would stand by his bed and look at him. And he got to where he wouldn't look in mirrors because he said, if I go by a mirror, I can see the little boy following me. So once again, I went back to our neighbor and I said, did any children die in the house? And he said, yes, he was my best friend and he was 9 years old and he died of diphtheria in like 1909 or something.
Debi,
some of these stories.
Let me jump in. This is when Debi, when you asked if a woman died in the house, if I would have been with you there, I would have saved you some time because I would have said, okay, did any man die in the house? Did any kid die in the house? Did a dog die in the house? I would have got all the 411. But see, what's kind of check this out. And Phil's back on. Phil, you there?
Phil?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Well, this is yeah, good. Okay. What I'm getting from these stories, first of all, you all are telling stories, and I truly believe in my heart of hearts that your stories are legit. It's what you've experienced. It's what you felt, seen, all the above. I personally have not had these types of encounters or connections. And it's because, as I've always said, I'm not wired the same way as you guys are. You guys you all have a connection to that side, to that entity, to that spirit, to that world. Now, Philip, I'll bring you back in. What is that connection? I mean, is it or we've talked Tiffany blood type. I mean, what it would remind me, Tiffany, what is that one blood type that you are? What is that? I'm Rh
negative, but I don't know if that really has to do with. Well, it might have to do with the spiritual realm or not. Debi, are you Rh negative?
No, I'm plain old O positive, just generic.
Oh, you're a very, very needed person out there. But Bill, I don't think that really has to do with the spiritual.
Okay, all right, maybe not.
No, I don't know that answer. I never even thought about that question. But I will tell you what I do know. Again, living this life, I learned a lot from that side, the spiritual side. And here's one of the things that is a hardcore fact. The fact is that we truly never die. Our flesh will decay, but our energy will go on. And then some people say, well, how come others have connections to that spiritual world like myself? It's our aura. It's the energy around us through lifetimes that we've encountered. And what actually happens is that some of us act as an energy source towards these other entities and spirits. Some of us can go to places and say that we felt like we've been there before, deja vu. Other times we feel like we're walking into something that's not there, like as if it was a body or a smell or a scent that we try to recollect maybe years ago, or we just can't pinpoint where it's coming from, but we know that we've encountered it once before. Sight, mind, and hearing things, all the senses. That's the aura, that's the energy around us. And this is what I was taught from the spiritual world. And that's exactly how it works. And because we truly never die, the spiritual world is very active. I understand the way that there's earthbound spirits and there's spirits that cross over. And I remember a few days ago, I was driving along the river and I just got these sensations through my body that I've never had before. And I was feeling like I was feeling someone else's thoughts and their feelings of their body as I'm looking at these old homes. And I couldn't understand it. I really was trying to comprehend it. And now the older I become, I start to realize that they're very active. Unfortunately, sometimes we encounter with the most darkest side of things. And then others say that the light of spirits come, loved ones, grandmothers, aunts, uncles. They will come sometimes in our darkest hours. And I believe it to be true, not because of just me, but because of the evidence that was gathered that, again, it's like putting a puzzle together. It coincides with some of the recordings that were done here at the Horsefly home, where you actually hear not like static vocubus chart or one of these spirit boxes. Like you actually hear a full, clear sentence that comes from absolutely nowhere from these people on the other side. Now, that does not happen all the time. In fact, it's very, very rare. But I started to realize is that they do hear us, they do see us, they do acknowledge us. It's a veil. The veil is very thin. Sometimes on the perfect storm, we can communicate with that side. And most of the time, quite frankly, we can't. And that's what I've encountered. That's what I've learned, is that we always go on. And the people that say that, talking about near-death experiences, that they went to the light and they came back and it wasn't their time yet. That's true. All of it's true. It's all true because they're not done fulfilling their soul here in the physical world.
Now,
Debbie, do you have any questions that you would like to ask Phil about his experiences?
No, but I will say this, that, I believe that, you bring in the dark things, and I've had a lot of psychics around me, and I've had some psychic relatives who taught me how to control not to bring it, because I did bring something pretty dark one time, who used to scratch me and scare me. And they, told me I brought that on myself. I made the mistake one time because I was really lacking faith in God, and I made the sorry mistake of saying, could you just give me a sign? Now, it got so bad that I finally told him that I had had enough signs. I understand that there is something life after death. But part of that, when I did that, was in this same house, I would walk in the kitchen, and my mom actually saw a man who was sitting. She looked up and saw a man sitting at my dining room table and really thought there was somebody in there. I don't know who this guy is, but I'm pretty sure that's who it was. But I would always see him in the kitchen, and as soon as I would walk in the kitchen, and I didn't realize it for a long time, but I would get 3 scratches on my arm. And, later on I realized that was either him trying to get my attention or, trying to hurt me, probably just trying to get my attention. But I try not to bring dark things in. And, one of my psychics said, if you don't want them there, you just in your head say, if you do not come in the name of Jesus Christ, you are not welcome. And when I feel like that there's something dark coming in, whether I'm asleep, a lot of times they try to come in your sleep, try to slip on in when you're not really thinking about it. But I just keep saying those things over and over again. I even can say it in my sleep if I'm scared. If you do not come in the name of Jesus Christ, you are not welcome. And that has really helped me because for a long time I was really scared. I mean, genuinely scared, because I thought these things would hurt me. And then, in the end, I was surrounded by, helpful, good ghosts, and she and I had a happy medium with each other. My oldest son one time, he was probably at 4, and said the same thing. He wanted to know who the old lady was who read to him at night. And he said, she sits by my bed. If I wake up, she reads me back to sleep. And a 4-year-old, we hadn't even talked about ghosts in the house. And I woke up one night, and I could hear pages being turned, like somebody turning pages of a book, and walked in the room, and, there was nobody there. But, I like to think that she was just a good entity, and I'm really thankful that I haven't been haunted by the things like Phil that would be really hard. I'm sure it's really devastating.
Especially when children are involved, yeah.
Especially when children are involved.
Phil,
like
jump in.
I just try not to bring it.
Yeah.
Phil, let me jump in. Sure. Look, I've had so many teams here, psychics, mediums, remote viewers. In fact, I was on the phone with Lori Johnson from the TV show a few weeks ago. She was doing a remote view to the home. I will say this. I try to fight the battle, good versus evil. I'm a family man. I do not worship Satan. I don't go to church, but I don't worship Satan either. I have my own beliefs because of my experiences. But I will say that when you fight these things, and it's a really true evil haunting, not a spiritual haunting, but an evil haunting. Some people might come here and say, I don't see the devil. Well, hello, you're not going to see Casper, the devil. It doesn't work like that. There's no such thing. I don't see a demon. You're not going to see it. Let me explain to the world this. The devil, Satan, Lucifer, whatever you want to call him, does exist. Demons are real. You will not see them. They do exist. And when you realize that, I tell people the devil does not wear a watch. You can come to my home or any place that might have a very, very tragic haunting and experience nothing at the haunting. However, because he does not wear a watch, you're on his clock, and he will come when he wants to.
Yeah.
And I will say that the curse book that is out, That is based off of all the paranormal teams that have been here, word for word, what they have experienced, not my word, documented verbally into a book, in audio as well. And I wanted people to realize that just don't take my word for it. Let's take everybody else's word for it as well. Let's see what they're encountering. And some of these people say there's a black fly and they live in different states and I'm being circled. Other people say they're getting very, very sick. Sometimes psychosomatic power of thought, power of suggestion, it's all true. We know this, right? However, when multiple people that do not know each other have encounters with demons, dark entities that are very similar between the fly, the horsefly, or things happening and the light flickering or a bolt of light shooting through the air, that's all real. And you start to realize that now you're on their time. And they can attack whenever they want. They can wait until you're almost at your last breath and bring you down a path that you don't want to go down. I've questioned it. I've tested it. And I can tell you that, it's all true. It's all, and unfortunately, I live it every single day. And so people say to me today, well, Phil, I don't believe it. You know what I say? Come to my home. Come here. Mm-hmm. You sign a waiver and you come to my home. And better yet, you sleep in my basement. How's about that? Do it. And I do that for a reason. I do that to show the world that these things are real. And I've had very big people down here that say, you know what? At first they came here, it's like, oh, but it ain't that bad. And then the next day they're like, I'm leaving. So it's energy. We're talking about energy, right? We're talking about a negative energy. And how do I describe an evil entity? It's like after a rainstorm and you get that static discharge on a cloudy, stormy day. You're walking through and you feel like all your hairs are standing up. You don't feel right. That's what it's like.
And you smell that ozone.
Yes.
But that's it's like that even, in just a regular haunting. And I don't think that that's a demonic haunting. You can feel that static charge and you can smell funny smells and it not be necessarily a demon. I think
a demon, you'll know it. Let me just jump in there really quick.
Oh, I know you'll know it. There's no doubt in my mind you won't know it.
Well, let me explain. People ask me this question, Phil, how do you know you're dealing with a demon versus a earthbound spirit? It's like putting your finger in a socket. You'll feel that shock wave. Not to the extent that you would feel in the physical world, but you feel like you're overwhelmed. You get drained. You don't feel right. You have very bad thoughts. Your equilibrium balance goes off. And all of a sudden, you just feel like something is not right with you and the environment around you, and you start to see things that they want you to see that do not really exist, but they can exist within our minds because that's what they can do to us.
Now, let me throw this question at you, Phil. With the energy or the negative energy that's in your home, it's what you've labeled as demonic. Is that energy, that spirit, able to possess someone? And where I'm going, I'm talking about possession as far as, exorcists, that type of, were we talking to that extent or is that too much Hollywood?
May, yes. No, listen, your face don't turn green. You don't vomit. That's all the movies. Let's face it.
Mm-hmm.
When I had
I was hoping you'd tell me, Phil. I'm hoping you would tell me that your head is literally spun around. That would have made a good soundbite for the show. You're not going to tell me that?
No, unfortunately, I'm not going to tell you that. But I will tell you that when I had a ministry here, the home was blasted in every single room. Prayers were done in every outside, inside. You're talking a ministry of 7-8 people. And they had said that me and a person that was working with me on the Horsefly Chronicles case had to have an exorcism. And I will say this, that it was bad. It was very bad. It was very evil. How do I explain what it's like to have a deliverance and something try to be removed from a person? You feel like there's something in your gut that's being pulled up, and you feel these pure evil thoughts of hatred, pain, killing, everything. Anything that's negative comes right through like a split second. And that's happening at the time the prayers are being read and the holy water is being thrown and the salt and everything else that's happening at the same exact time. Because there's a standoff between demons and the spiritual world of good, and whoever's the practitioner, that fight goes on for a very long time. And unfortunately, we lost that battle. Now, I will say that my house was cleared for 48 hours. I remember my kids waking up on a Sunday morning, and they had tears in their eyes. They're playing with their toys in the living room, and my wife was like, it's gone. We could feel it's gone. There was even like a nice smell in the home. And Monday night came, I had to go into the basement to do paperwork, and I seen a shadow, and I tried to dismiss it. And then I seen another shadow, and I said to my wife, you better come down here. So she goes, Phil, these things are gone. We had a whole ministry here for an entire day doing everything under the sun. And there was a toy dinosaur on the floor, and she sits at the couch, and she goes, there's nothing happening. All of a sudden, the dinosaur goes off by itself. With the dinosaur, the only way it can go off is if you push the tail. It's not light or voice or motion activated. At the same exact time, my kids on the third floor were screaming that the lights were flickering. I says to my kids, you better get downstairs. I told my wife, go with the baby. I told my kids, get your cell phones ready because this thing is back. There's a video on YouTube. What you see is what you get, quite frankly. It's a dinosaur on top of a slot machine. It's impossible for what happened to happen. And it was saying this in its own words. We're not going anywhere. After that point of my life, I realized that this is a scary battle, that when you have a ministry here, when you have people that practice the word of God, I've also had shamans, I've had Wiccans, I've had people here after that point. Some people have different beliefs that you can't get rid of it. If you get rid of this completely, maybe you die with it, or you move. And I've moved to 10 different locations, and I could tell you that spirits do follow. And anyone who doesn't believe that a spirit follows from state to state really needs to read the books. Because
I believe you with that. When it comes down to it, I'm assuming that you're Roman Catholic because you're Italian. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, when it comes to the Catholic faith, when it comes down to it, the Vatican is almost impossible to get a sanctioned exorcism. And it's even more difficult to even have someone come and listen to you about it. I can't even imagine having something in my life that negative. I've got some crazy experiences, but nothing that really jumped out as demonic. And I feel for your family, and I feel for you. And it's probably like you said, it's probably not going to end soon, unfortunately. But so what do you recommend for anybody that is going through a similar situation for you as you are?
Well, what I could recommend is this. Again, I'm still learning, living, and teaching what I'm going through. But if you're fighting with the spouse, or the family is fighting and arguing, and you feel it's beyond what it should be, picture this in your mind, that there's an energy in front of you, and that energy will get stronger the more arguments that happen, screaming or fighting. Remove yourself from that situation and get out of that area. Go for a 10-minute walk. Just leave. And that energy will leave too for a certain amount of time, because you're not feeding it the fire that it wants to fuel and ignite and cause destruction within a home. And that's what it does. And I taught my family that when these fights break out, leave, get out of the house and just go for a walk. And I can promise you, when you come back, it won't be half as bad. And that's a fact. That's what I can teach people. Can I teach people how to get rid of it? The answer is no, I can't, because I'm still battling it. I'm a big guy. I'm 49 years old. If you say, Phil, will you come into the basement, your own basement at 2 a.m? The answer is no. Not because of what I think is here, because of what I don't want to see. I don't think I would survive seeing it for face value if it was what I think it is. A lot of the pictures that were caught, and a lot of stuff is on my Facebook. I put on these videos that paranormal teams came forward with. I scratch my head, I rack my brain, I say, is it real? Is it Photoshop? What's going on here? But then it all correlates to the original stuff that I have. And I'm like, well, these things are so smart that they'll show themselves, or the people will hear them when they want to. Not every team is going to get it, the same exact thing, but they're going to get something similar. And if they don't, some of these teams go home with things with them. We had a paranormal event here for the first time at the Horsefly House a few weeks ago. And it was a debate. Me and my wife were really thinking about it. Should we actually go forward with this? I don't get out to do paranormal investigations. Number one, I'm not an investigator. Number two, as a family man, it's hard for me to travel. So I felt like for me to give back to the paranormal community, and a lot of people say, oh, the Horsefly case is fake. I don't argue with people. You believe what you want. It's okay. But I had an event for people to come here, and what you see is what you see. And people have had their experiences, and one person got taken over in the portal, and that was bad. And it's the energy, it drains you. It just takes the life out of you and then fills you up with that negative energy. And when that happens, you really got to remove that person, because if you don't, that person could have a problem going forward in life and just make all the bad choices. So People do experience it. I try to teach the world what I learn.
Yeah. If you remove that person with the negative, or you're saying, is that person there, and then is the spirit causing the negative energy? How? Tell me that. I mean, elaborate.
The evil entity will attach. So here's how it works. Again, picture in your mind, you see dark energy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know what lightning looks like. Now picture that lightning is dark, right? Picture dark energy attracting to an aura around the person. It pulls that aura and connects to them as an attachment. When it does that, it has full control over that person if that person's stuck there long enough.
Gotcha. Now, if you try to remove that person while they've succumbed to this negative energy, is that not helping them out? Should they leave with that negative energy still in them, or should they be quote unquote
that's a very good
exercise?
Yeah. No. What happened is that what I realized anyways, once they're out of this certain room, we call the portal, we put a deadbolt on it. Once they're out of the house, sometimes we'll try to get them out of it and they'll be okay. If I see that the person's eyes are dark, really dark, and they have like a robotic turn to their head, like they're actually not comprehending what you're saying and responding to certain questions, then they're still attached. And it takes some time to break them out of that. Again, I'm not that person to do that, but other people that were here were able to do that. And that's what happens. And most of the time, the spirit or that negative energy will go back to its stronghold in the home. But unfortunately, there are cases where people are attacked by these entities because people are vulnerable. Now, evil finds our weakest link. Every human soul on the physical planet has a weak link. Everybody. It could be a drug addiction, alcohol, temper, abuse. It will find that pinhole within a person, and if it does, it will open that pinhole up and try to consume that person. And if a guy was having a small alcohol addiction, it would bring him right down to an extreme alcohol addiction or with drugs. So it's you have to be very, very careful. And then some people say, well, I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in this. I don't believe in that. And I say that's a good thing. If you don't believe in it, don't walk into it and just live life and be happy. And if you do feel like you're being overwhelmed with negative energy, then you need to seek some help immediately. Not by false representation, but by people who actually know the practice of the spiritual world.
Tiffany, you said Aunt Debbie, which I think after 10 minutes or so of her being on the show, I'm entitled to call her Aunt Debbie as well.
Yes,
she's got a story about the husband who is a skeptic. And actually, this is I want to hear this story because I want to also get Phil's take on how he deals with skeptics. So Deb.
Oh yeah,
take it
absolutely.
away.
Come on, Debbie.
Yeah.
Well, the biggest thing was he used to tell me never to talk about any of this out loud because he didn't want people to think that I was crazy or that he was married to a crazy woman. Well, again, because
too late.
Yeah, too late. So there were two instances because I would tell him all this stuff and he was like, yeah, right. We were in our bed one night and we had switched bedrooms with the children, and it was in the same bedroom where our son had seen the little boy standing by his bed. And I'd put the kids to bed and they were tucked in the other room, and we had just put our heads on the pillow. And to my side, I heard a child say, "Mama," and I sat up in the bed and I said, "Yes." And then I walked over and I was like, "Yes." And then he said, "Did you hear that?" And I was like, "A child saying mama?" And he said, "Yeah." Well, we both got up and ran to the other side of the house, and all three of the kids were in their beds. Well, he was like, you try to find a reason for whatever that was. But the best one was he used to come home before the kids got home from school, and he said he was sitting on the toilet. And our toilet used to be part of a back porch because it wasn't built with plumbing. And he said he was sitting there and he heard footsteps running
Great visual,
down.
By the way.
Great visual, by the way. There's two doors and on the one side and the other side, and both of them swang to different parts of the house. And he said he was sitting there and he heard footsteps running down the steps. And the door swung open, And he thought, well, one of the kids must have been home, and I didn't know it. So he started calling their names, Nathan, and no, Ian, no, Aaron, no answer. So then the door closes on him, and he hears footsteps running upstairs. And about that time, the school bus pulled up, and all three of the kids walked in the house. So he said those are the only two times of all the things that I've ever said. He'll say, I don't know about all the rest, but I can tell you that those two things did happen to me, that there was something in the house that opened the door and ran across, up the steps and down the steps. But it's funny because for a long time my kids didn't even want me to say anything because they didn't want their friends to think that Mama was crazy. But if you've never experienced it, people just look at you, and I put something on Facebook, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sure all of my friends are talking about the nutty person that's going to talk about ghosts tonight.
Well, let me tell you a little secret. You're not crazy because I have been there, and I experienced a few things of my own there. So one of the things, this is sort of, I don't know if this is actually supernatural or not, but the only time I've ever been bucked from a horse was in the field where the old buddy died, right?
Right. There was one murder and one suicide, which for a small little town, that was a big deal. And where you were, you took my horse walking down one of the fields, and I had tried it before, and she got to a certain point, and she wouldn't go any further. And it literally got ice cold, and I looked over, and I could see the foundation of a house, and in my head, I could see somebody had died there. So once again, I went back to the old neighbor, Raleigh Benz, who said, oh, yeah, well, there was a guy there. They said he committed suicide, but his kid really murdered. He really shot him. This was about 1920. But where you were, we were having a party, and some neighbor stops and said, your niece is on your bucking horse over in this field, and it won't stop. And
I actually, but I'd ridden that horse so many times, never had a problem.
You tried riding her where that was, and she was having none of it.
I was riding that horse bareback that day. I'm almost positive.
You were bareback, yeah.
I was riding that horse bareback because this is the sweetest horse you'd ever seen. And I tell you what, as soon as we got to that point, that horse started bucking like a freaking bronco out of hell. And it was the scariest thing I've ever been. And I broke my tailbone that day.
Oh, I'm sure.
I literally did. I did.
It was pretty funny to watch. But you held on for 8 seconds.
So yes, I did. I hung on for at least 30 seconds, right? 60 seconds?
Well, it had to have been that because somebody had the time to see you and drive back to my house and say, your niece is on a runaway horse.
Horrible. It's so sad. But yeah, so there's been a lot of things that I can verify with Debi's houses, and it wasn't just the house, it was the environment. Like you can sense it. Like Phil said, there's a
like
sensation.
Phil said, there's static electricity that's in the air, and you feel something that you don't know what it is, but you kind of do know what it is. But the air is different.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's heavy, and sometimes it's cold, and sometimes it does smell like sulfur. And but for me, I always would feel cold right before it happened. Like it could be in the dead of summer, and it would be ice cold in the room.
Tell us about the kitty cat.
Oh, I completely forgot about that. Yeah, I had a black cat that. I'd had for some time, and I came home one night, and we had a babysitter, and I guess my oldest one was probably 10, and every light in the house was on, and the babysitter met me at the door, and she's like, I can't come back here anymore. And I said, what happened? And she said, well, I kept hearing footsteps upstairs, so I walk upstairs, but all the boys were asleep. So I came downstairs to watch television, and your black cat jumped up on the couch and walked in behind my head. And about that time, I remembered she got hit last week and was dead. And when I turned to look the other way, she wasn't there. And she was like, I just can't come back here anymore. I'm sorry. And that was the last time she babysat for me.
Yeah, that damn black cat.
It freaked her. She was probably 16, and I've seen her a couple times since then, and she was like, I will never forget that black cat episode at your house. But obviously that was probably just a residual haunting as opposed to an active haunting where it's like a little record that repeats itself, and it was just something the cat did, and maybe he didn't realize he was dead.
So have you had any of the negative hauntings that Phil or Julia have had?
I've had one, and it was the most frightening experience of my life, and it was it ended up being one of my patients when I was a visiting nurse. And I would go and see this guy. He lived way out in the middle of nowhere, and he had been an engineer during Vietnam. So he had some pretty bad PTSD, and he was being treated at the VA in Louisville for PTSD, but he also was a binge alcoholic. So he could be sober for days, but when he would get drunk, he would drink like 2 fifths of grain alcohol, and that would probably keep his blood alcohol up for days. And I went to see him a couple of times, and he would tell me, he goes, you don't understand. He said, the devil comes to me at night, and he shows me things. He shows me really great things, which I'm sure Phil can attest to how they try to lure you in, and takes me places. But he also tells me to do bad stuff. And I was like, David, what does he tell you to do? And he goes, well, sometimes he tells me to kill you. And I said, well, if he ever tries to tells you to kill me when I'm coming in to see you as your visiting nurse, would you tell me when I come in? Because his house was so old that the front porch was off of it, so I'd had to have jumped about 12 feet to get out of the front door. And this one particular time I came in, and it was like on a Friday, and he was sitting there, and he had something covered up in front of him. And I started talking to him, and I asked him how he was. And I got out my blood pressure cuff, and I turned around, and he uncovered this cloth that he had on his coffee table, and there were a bunch of knives there. And I was like, oh, no, don't tell me he told you to kill me. And I said, what's going on? And he goes, well, the devil came last night, and he said, he told me I had to kill you today. And he had a knife in his hand, and I'm like moving from one side of the couch to the other. And this little social worker comes walking in the back door, and I'm shaking my head trying to tell her not to come in, not to come in, not to come in. And she walks right up next to me. And then he said, well, I guess I'm going to have to kill you too. And there was no way out. So I finally convinced him to let me use his telephone. And I called the constable, which was the only person in this, it was English, Indiana. Could he come over, because he liked this constable, and the constable talked him out of the knife, and that was the last time I ever went over to this guy's house. And it was probably
Was he committed after that?
He was committed after that, actually. He went up to the VA hospital, and long story short, about 4 months later, I woke up and I looked over in my bed, and there was this glowing head that was like screaming, coming right towards me. And I remember I woke up and I, just jumped up and I hit my hands and thought I knocked it off. And I was like, what the hell was that? So I got on the other side of the bed, and I went back to sleep, and I woke up, and my husband's hands were on my neck, and he was choking me to death. And I'm trying to pull his hands off of my neck, and he is sound asleep. And I'm like, he's behind me, and I'm trying to move. And finally, I got his hands off my neck, and I was like, what were you choking me for? You about choked me to death. And he said, I have no idea. Got a call the next morning from the social worker who said, you will not believe who died last night. And I'm like, yes, I will believe. It was David, wasn't it? And she said, yeah, he died about 1 o'clock in the morning at the VA hospital. So I'm sure he visited that havoc on me.
What the hell is wrong with you people? What is wrong with you people?
That story I'm telling you, that story has always given me the creeps. And I'm telling you, that
to this
story,
day, I sleep with the light on. I always have a light where I can see because I'm too afraid of the dark because of that one.
Yeah, that's the epitome of evil right there.
Yeah,
Evil.
He was a bad guy, and I'm sure, like with Phil's case, this guy became a really severe alcoholic, and he didn't have he had no family support, and he just didn't have the strength to fight whatever it was that was making him so evil, and just drug him straight down. But he was bound and determined he was going to take me with him. But that's probably the darkest of any of them.
Oh, okay. Now, real quick, Phil, is your your inner strength? I mean, describe that. Are you strong? You feel like you're strong enough to fight off, or withstand this challenge, or this?
No. Wait. That's not the right question.
Okay.
Phil sounds like he's strong enough, but are your children strong enough? Is the real question.
Oh, there you go. Okay. No. Okay. In a word.
Just a flat no. So what do you do to protect your children is the real question here.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
Well,
good.
And here's the answer to that. After having priest, ministry, shaman, Wiccan, I start to realize that it can be very bad here at times. And I have friends come over sometimes just to sleep over, to acknowledge what's going on here as an outsider, to see the different shifts of energy and how it affects the children. My wife, maybe even me, And the battle of trying to have these people help to remove that I've had in the past, I realize it doesn't work, right? Not because it's not a strong belief, it's because of what we're dealing with. There's so many different things. It's just not like a regular haunting, unfortunately.
It probably started when you brought in the however many entities that you wanted to bring over. That wasn't helpful.
Truthful, exactly. So what I do now.
But as a young person, you don't realize that.
Right.
Exactly. When I told back in the 80s how there's another road. There's
but
a
the Ouija board was a game. I mean, it's still sold in Walmart, for God's sake.
Yeah, because it's a moneymaker, but they shouldn't really be selling it because it's the intent of a person to communicate with the other side. If it's a strong enough intent, it could break through and things can happen. A Ouija board is nothing more than a game. Let's face it. It's nothing more than a game. You can have a glass upside down and spell out the alphabet and write on paper. If you have enough intent, it'll work.
It's not a game. It's a tool.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like a tool in the shed.
Yes.
So what I'm doing now, the stages of my life, I'm still moving forward to have other people come here because let me teach you something and teach the world something. If you're going to fight the enemy, you better make sure you know what enemy you're fighting. And that was my mistake in the past. Because if you don't, he's going to get you hard. And he's got me hard and my family hard. So I'm going to have other teams come here. I have other experiments that can be done within the home. And once we have full understanding of exactly what we think we're dealing with, 99%, then we can combat it. Until then, it's still unsolved. And that's the only way to answer the question.
Good answer.
When your children, my question is, if your children stay at, say, their grandparents' house or somebody's house, does this entity follow them?
The dark shadows now follow everywhere. In the last couple of years, well, 3-4 years ago, that wasn't likely. We have a lot of relatives. I live in PA. We have a lot of relatives in Staten Island, New Jersey. Years ago, we wouldn't see the dark shadows. Now we do when we go away. And it's just letting us know that they're there as well. So it becomes as if it's that much more stronger because it wasn't removed, because we don't know who we're trying to remove. And that's the answer to that. The devil's famous word, deception. A person can go into a haunting and say, oh, it's a friendly spirit. Deception. He doesn't wear a watch, but he will fool you, and he will trick you, and he will try to destroy you. Deception.
Now, the paranormal people will call shadow people an entity all to itself. It's not an angelic spirit, and it's not a person, and it's probably to some extent not a demon as of yet, but shadow people are supposedly something all to themselves.
It's sort of an in-between creature.
Yeah, and they haven't got instead of gotten their angel wings, got their devil horns yet. They haven't tormented enough souls to be really bad. Well, and maybe that's their intent.
Is that why? Wait, whoa, hold on. Hold on, Phil. That might explain why there's starting to be stubs on the top of my head.
Yeah, that might be it. Kevin.
All right, Phil, go ahead.
What I was going to say is this, again, through my knowledge and my own research in my own home, is that when I start to see the dark shadow, all of a sudden you don't feel right. It affects the kids, and then they start arguing. And what happens is it bounces around very quick, very quick. Some of the teams have caught it on actual film. And it looks like an energy just shooting through the air. It's on my Facebook once again. That energy attacks different auras, and it bounces around to cause problems till it builds up strong enough to try to destroy a whole family. But now I'm starting to understand how to almost walk away from it as best as we can. But, some of the shadow people, some might be interdimensional, right? We don't know, but I know it creates enough negative energy within a home to cause problems. That's what it does do. Because let's face it, it needs our energy as well.
Right. And I think to some extent, all of what we have talked about needs someone's energy to manifest itself. Whether it's,
yes.
Your positive thoughts or your negative thoughts or whatever. I mean, I've certainly, the day after my mother died, saw little white orbs circling me in my bed and felt the most contented peace and knew exactly what that was my mother telling me goodbye. But,
yep.
I think probably to some extent you could you could see those and know those are really negative and you probably don't want to mess with them.
Yeah.
Or try not to acknowledge.
Okay, guys, check us out. Our live portion of the show ended at midnight. As we're wrapping up, there's a little segment that I do to conclude the show with the guest called Round of Shots. Obviously, it's the take on our shooting from the lip name. Nip. Free the nip.
We were going to be
shooting from the nip.
I thought it was
free the nip.
Yeah, you have a drinking shot.
Yeah, my horns are protruding out of my skull. Thanks to you guys. All right.
Debbie,
these
when
are
you come back home, give you a shot, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. These are 6 question-answer things. Just have fun with it. Deb, name your first concert.
Donny Osmond.
Marie was a little bit country. He was a little bit rock and roll, right?
Yeah, she was probably 8 at the time. No, he was like, we were 12.
Gotcha.
I was in the 7th grade.
Wow. Posters. Was there like dolls? Did you have like a Donny Osmond doll?
No, but I probably kissed he was in the centerfold of Teen Beat, and that's the poster I had up on my wall. And then there was Paul Revere the Raiders for my wild side, because the guy had a ponytail.
Did you kiss that poster? Did you kiss the poster?
I did. I'm not going to lie.
Okay, number 2. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
To be invisible.
Oh, like your little spirit friend. Okay.
With that invisibility, Deb, who would you most likely try to, or either person or situation you would try to infiltrate?
Well, I would probably like to go on with the meetings like you were talking about with these people who don't come clean with what's really going on with UFOs and just be a fly on the wall so I could really hear what was going on. But that's the reason is, because there's so much untruth out there about so many different things. I just would like to be invisible so I could go in and learn the truth. The truth is out there.
It
Amen.
is. Long live the X-Files.
That's why you're my favorite aunt. I know.
Favorite aunt. She's moving up my list too. She's number
awesome.
3. Yeah, number 3. Tell us the favorite Deb pizza topping.
Pepperoni.
Just pepperoni.
Just pepperoni.
That's it.
And actually, Tiffany's dad's stepsister opened up a pizza place, and I live out in the middle of God's country, out in the middle of nowhere at Patoka Lake. Opened up a pizza place and is some of the best pizza I've ever had. So that's a little plug for her Aunt Bud. Well, it was, what's his name? What was your stepdad's name, Tiffany? I can just drew a blank.
Carl Scheenbackler?
No, step-grandfather, not your stepdad, your step-grandfather. Timmy's.
Dude, I don't know. Are you talking about pizza? I have no clue.
Yes, your dad had a stepfather that your grandmother was married to.
Yeah?
What was his name?
I didn't know they opened a pizza place.
Well, his sister did. Yeah.
What is this, Ancestry.com? Wait, what are we talking here?
I know.
I don't know.
You know Roxanne.
They've never sent me coupons. I don't know. I
Tiffany,
can't go if there's no coupon. I don't get paid on this show.
Go to Ancestry.com and figure this all out.
Isn't it Carl? Oh, not Carl. I can't remember his name. It was
Ray.
Timmy's stepdad. Ray. It's Ray's daughter.
I didn't even know they made a pizza. I had no clue.
Yeah, they have a huge pizza shop. Anyway, as I digress, you can edit that part out too.
Okay. No, that's all right. No, I had no idea.
That's a keeper. Tiffany being enlightened on her history. Yeah, no.
Dude,
all right, Tiffany.
I don't even know. Okay. All right.
Number 4.
So,
Tiffany.
Debbie, what is your favorite phone app?
I shouldn't even say, but I'm going to.
Oh, just
because
say it.
I'm so obsessed with it. It's Words with Friends Cheat, because I cannot stand when people beat me.
Wait a minute, what?
Awesome.
What is that?
And the bad part about it is some of the people that play Words with Friends are going to know now that I use the Words with Friends Cheat app. And they're going to know now how I beat the crap out of them every time I play.
I love that. I love that about you.
My secret's out.
So,
Wait,
okay,
I'm lost. This phone app is called what? Oh, it's a game. Okay, what is the game? What's it called?
Words with Friends.
It's like Scrabble type.
It's like Scrabble.
Oh, you know what? Yeah. I was really hoping for something a little more juicy than that.
No.
Or risque.
No.
Yeah.
We're getting to that,
I'm
Kevin.
an egghead. I'm an intellect, so I gotta have this, the smart stuff.
All right.
Okay,
you nerd.
We're getting to the fun stuff here, Kevin.
All right. Number 5. If you had access to a time machine and you can go anywhere in the past, your living past, or you're like back to the dinosaurs, anywhere in the past, where would you go?
I would probably want to go to the time when Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address. If I could do any one thing that I ever wished I could have been there for, that would have probably been it.
Why?
You have sealed the deal on you being a nerd. The Gettysburg Address.
Probably, and you're all gonna laugh on me this one too, but I really think that in my past life that there was, and Dale and I both felt like this, that there was some connection to the Civil War. And that he and I knew each other in the Civil War. Only I think I was probably a field nurse, because the first thing I ever said I wanted to be was I wanted to be like Clara Barton, and I wanted to be a nurse like her. And she was the first Civil War nurse. And Dale is totally obsessed with the Civil War. He and I both, I wrote down something. I was like, you tell
Dale's
me where
your
you think
husband?
we knew each other. Yes.
Yeah, Dale's your husband.
Okay.
He said Chattanooga, and that's what I had written down. So we both felt a connection to the Civil War battle at Chattanooga. Only I think I was on the opposite side of him, and I just tended to him when he died.
Oh,
do you know
wow.
what? Check this out, Tiffany. I would love to be a fly so I could be on the wall. Actually, not the wall. On Dale and Deb's headboard to hear the pillow talk that they have.
And it's usually crazy stuff like that.
It is hot.
Yeah. It's really exciting stuff like that.
If you knew them, you knew it was spicy and hot.
Yeah. I could hear Deb going, Dale, do that, grow a Lincoln beard for me.
Do that Civil War thing for me.
Tell me about the time you got shot in the war again and I saved you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay.
Only I don't think I did. I think I took care of him, but I think he died. He and I both have had the same dream, and it was about that before we ever even had talked about that.
Nice.
And that's a whole nother episode for, people talking about past lives experiences.
Mm-hmm.
We'll bring you on another show like that. Okay, here's the last one, and it's a goodie. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Marry, bang, or kill. Here are your choices. Donald Trump, Pierce Brosnan, or Kanye West.
Well,
bang, kill, or marry.
I would like to kill Kanye West, marry Donald Trump, and certainly bang Pierce Brosnan.
Why not marry Pierce Brosnan? Oh,
Pierce is the hot one. You're gonna.
Oh yeah,
you're right.
Him for
there you
sure.
go.
Okay.
Married once for love, the second time for money. Well, I've already married the once for love, so
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Oh,
I thought something about Trump and grabbing the P was the enticing part, right?
There is just absolutely nothing that I find attractive about that man. Although I will vote for him, there's still nothing that I find attractive about him. And I'm really because when I heard the other guy talking about if Hillary gets elected, they're going to release some information about what's really going on with the UFOs. I'm like, damn, does that mean that if Trump gets elected, then I'm not going to be able to know that finally?
Damn it!
Well,
I know.
Well, I actually didn't Grant say Tiffany, didn't Grant say that he expects all this stuff to be rolled out before the 8th, before election day?
Yeah, because because it's useless after the fact.
In a
sense,
it's
not useless, but it's all part of the.
So Hillary Clinton knew about alien encounters and didn't release the information. I came in a little bit late. I was watching Conjuring 2. I was watching a scary movie before I came in, just to pregame before my talk with you.
To prep yourself. Is Conjuring 2 good? Did you like it?
It was actually based on a true story. And I actually went back and looked at it. And in the end, they said that the girl finally admitted that she had made it up, and then 30 years later said, no, all this really happened. So you never, when it's done, you really don't know if it really happened or did she just fabricate all this for attention.
Yeah, so, and you never know for sure until you're in their shoes, and that's very difficult to do.
All I can say is, what went on with her, I want no part of that. You bring that stuff on yourself, and I try not to do that. Yeah. I try to be the positive light in everybody.
Yeah, and we love you for that.
Well, thank you.
Even though I was bucked all the way across, your field.
At least you weren't killed.
It almost sounds like we went a very sexual route there, Tiffany. You were bucked while you were riding bareback
like crazy.
I mean,
while I was riding bareback, I was bucked crazy. Well, Kevin, I know you like to spice it up at the end, so there's your soundbite.
Thank you, baby.
I'm 58. There's just no spicing it up at almost 12:30 at night for me.
Then you need to hang out with us more often. You need to hang out with us more often, Deb. Hang out with us more.
It would have to be more like at about 10 o'clock. Look, I worked at the University of Louisville Hospital doing urology as a nurse practitioner for several years. There is no subject off limits for me, and I could probably make you blush.
Nice.
But I've tried to be really good on this show.
I'll take my chances with you. I'll take my chances.
I could make you blush.
Kevin, Debbie is the one that told me all about the birds and the bees.
Sweet. Yes. That'll be we'll save that for a Monday night show. I want to get
that's Monday night.
Yeah, Monday night. Birds and the bees. We could talk sex Monday night. So
okay.
All right.
Well, we do talk sex Monday nights a lot. So
we do.
Yeah.
We do.
Well, right. Debbie,
Tiffany, look at it. 12:25. Good Lord.
I know it. It was a great show.
Been real.
Yeah, fun.
It's been real fun. Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Debbie.
Halloween, everyone.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and we will definitely try to get you on again when we have some ghost stories. So,
all righty.
Thank you. You have a great evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Wow, Tiffy.
I think that was our longest show.
It was a long one. Probably maybe one or two that might have went as long when we might have had either like Russ or Remy on with us. Those shows kind of went past midnight a few times. But hey, good stuff.
Remy definitely did. Yeah.
Grant, Cameron, first segment, the WikiLeaks emails, John Podesta. We got to follow how that all plays out. So Philip, Siracusa, his wife Julia, your Aunt Debbie. Good stories. Actually, it's nice fun little kind of Halloween type theme show. So good stories to tell.
Well, happy Halloween to you. I'm going to
Same to you and your family. No show for me Monday night. I am taking Monday night off. The next Shooting from the Lip show will be Wednesday night with my buddy Greg Unthanked. All right. So for Tiffany Mack, I'm Kevin Hale. Peace out, Louisville. Good night.
Night.